Imagine checking your bank account and realizing you have exactly $3.17 left to survive the next 12 days. Not $300, not 30, $3.17. That's where Ethan Parker found himself on a freezing Tuesday night in Chicago. But what happened 11 months later shocked everyone who knew him. Because Ethan didn't win the lottery. He didn't inherit money. He didn't start some flashy business. Yet somehow, he went from sleeping in his car to building over $147,000 in savings and investments. And it all started with a strange 28-minute habit that almost nobody talks about. Stay with me, because somewhere in this story, you might discover the exact reason money keeps slipping through your fingers. Ethan was 34 years old, divorced, working 2 jobs, completely exhausted. By day, he stocked shelves at a grocery store for $16 an hour. At night, he delivered food until nearly midnight, 7 days a week.
No vacations, no weekends.
No life. And still, he was drowning. Every month followed the same painful pattern. Paycheck arrives. Bills get paid. Unexpected expense shows up. Credit cards fill the gap. Stress builds. Repeat. Over. And over. And over again. Have you ever felt like you're running as fast as possible, yet somehow moving backward? Ethan knew that feeling better than anyone. One evening, after finishing his delivery shift, he stopped at a gas station to buy dinner. His card was declined. Embarrassed, he tried again. Declined. Again. Declined. The cashier quietly whispered, "Sir, maybe try another card."
He did.
Declined. Standing behind him was a little girl holding a bag of chips. She looked at her mother and innocently asked, "Mommy, why is that man sad?" That question shattered him, because for the first time, Ethan realized something terrifying. His financial struggles weren't temporary anymore. They had become his identity. He returned to his car, parked in an empty lot, and cried. Not for 5 minutes. For nearly an hour. If you've ever hit rock bottom financially, subscribe and follow right now. This channel is dedicated to helping ordinary people break free from the cycle that keeps millions trapped. That night, Ethan did something he had never done before. He stopped asking, "How can I make more money?" and started asking, "Where exactly is my money going?" That single question changed everything. Because most people don't have an income problem. They have an awareness problem. Here's a truth wealthy people understand. Money disappears in silence. Wealth grows through attention. The next morning, Ethan walked into a public library. Not to apply for jobs. Not to use the internet. He simply wanted warmth. As he wandered between shelves, an elderly janitor noticed him staring blankly at the finance section. The man smiled and said, "Son, broke people spend money every day. Wealthy people study money every day." Ethan laughed. What difference could studying money make? "I barely have any." The old man looked him directly in the eyes.
Exactly.
That's why you need to study it even more. Then he handed Ethan a yellow notebook. What happened after that conversation would completely rewrite Ethan's future. And it all began with just 28 minutes. Ethan stared at the old yellow notebook for several seconds. It looked ordinary.
Cheap.
The cover was worn out. A few pages were already bent. Honestly, he almost left it on the library table. Because when you're broke for years, you stop believing small things can change your life. You begin searching for miracles, big opportunities, secret investments, lucky breaks. But almost never do people escape poverty through one giant moment. They escape through hundreds of tiny decisions repeated consistently. And Ethan had no idea that this worn-out notebook was about to expose the most painful truth of his entire life. The elderly janitor sat across from him. Every night, the old man said, "I want you to spend exactly 28 minutes with this notebook." Ethan laughed. 28 minutes? That's it. The old man nodded. Most people spend more time scrolling social media before bed than they spend planning their entire financial future. That sentence hit Ethan harder than he expected, because he knew it was true. He checked his phone. His screen time report showed something disturbing. 5 hours and 37 minutes. In one day. More than 38 hours every single week. Almost an entire full-time job.
Gone.
Vanished. Without creating a single dollar. Pause for a second and ask yourself, if someone paid you $25 an hour, how much money did your screen time cost you this week? Many people never calculate this. The wealthy often do. If you're learning something valuable from this story, hit subscribe and follow right now. Stories like Ethan's are changing the way thousands of people think about money. That night, sitting in the driver's seat of his car beneath a flickering streetlight, Ethan opened the notebook. The first page contained only 3 questions. Question number 1. How much money came into your life today?
Easy.
Ethan wrote, grocery store shift, $128. Food delivery earnings, $64. Total, $192. The second question read, how much money left your life today? Ethan started writing. Coffee, $6.75. Fast food lunch, $14.20. Gas station snacks, $11.80. Energy drinks, $8.50. Gas, $27. Streaming subscriptions, $34.99. Convenience store purchases, $18.40. Phone accessories, $22. By the time he finished, Ethan froze. He had spent over $143 in one single day. His hands began shaking because for years, he had constantly repeated, I don't make enough money. But the notebook revealed another truth. He wasn't just under-earning. He was unconsciously leaking money. Small purchases, random spending, impulse buying, tiny financial decisions that felt harmless individually but devastating collectively. And here's something many people never realize. A daily $15 habit doesn't feel expensive until you understand it costs nearly $5,500 per year. That's enough to start an investment portfolio, enough to eliminate debt, enough to build an emergency fund, enough to completely change someone's future. The third question in the notebook was the hardest. Did today's spending bring you closer to freedom or further from it? Ethan couldn't answer. Instead, he stared through the windshield. He suddenly remembered something. 7 years earlier, he and his wife had dreamed of buying a small home. They had drawn floor plans on napkins, talked about children, talked about vacations, talked about retirement. Then life happened. Debt piled up. Arguments increased. Stress replaced laughter. And eventually, the marriage collapsed under financial pressure. According to multiple studies, money problems consistently rank among the leading causes of relationship conflict. Ethan knew this firsthand. As tears rolled down his face, he finally wrote, today's spending pushed me further away from freedom. For the first time in years, Ethan wasn't lying to himself. And strangely, that honesty felt liberating. The next evening, he returned to the library. The elderly janitor was mopping the hallway. Ethan held up the notebook. I think I've been sabotaging myself. The old man smiled. No, he replied. You've simply been unconscious. Then he wrote 4 words on a scrap piece of paper. Track.
Cut. Save. Invest.
Master these 4, the old man said quietly, and being broke becomes temporary. Ethan folded the paper and placed it inside the notebook. He still had no savings, still had debt, still slept in his car. Nothing had changed externally, but internally, everything was beginning to shift. Because before wealth shows up in your bank account, it first shows up in your habits. And Ethan was about to discover the most uncomfortable habit of all. Ethan didn't sleep that night, not because he was working, not because he was stressed about deliveries, but because for the first time in his life, he was awake in a different way. Awake to patterns, awake to habits, awake to the invisible system that had been quietly controlling his life for years. He sat in his car with a yellow notebook resting on his lap, streetlights flickering like unstable thoughts in his mind. Then he opened it again. This time, the old janitor had added something new on the last page. Just one sentence. Your financial life is a mirror. Most people just don't want to look into it long enough. Ethan swallowed hard, because he knew exactly what that meant. The next morning, he made a decision that felt small but was actually terrifying. He decided to track every single dollar he touched. Not just spending, not just bills. Everything. Even the smallest transactions that usually don't matter. If you're watching this story unfold and something inside you feels uncomfortable, don't ignore it. That discomfort is usually where change begins. Subscribe and follow now if you want more stories like this, because most people never get to this part. By 9:12 a.m., Ethan had already spent $4.50 on coffee. By 11:03 a.m., $2.79 on vending machine snacks. By 1:40 p.m., $13.20 on lunch. And something strange started happening. He began hesitating before every purchase. Not because he was broke, but because he was finally aware. And awareness changes behavior faster than motivation ever will. That night, something unexpected happened during his delivery shift. A customer accidentally tipped him $50 in cash. Ethan froze. In the past, this would have been excitement. Maybe relief. Maybe even instant spending.
But now?
Now, it felt like responsibility. Like weight. Like opportunity. He held the bill in his hand for almost a full minute before putting it inside a separate pocket. Not his wallet. Not his spending pocket. A different one. The notebook had called it money with intention. That night, the old janitor's words echoed again. Most people don't lack money. They lack structure around money. Ethan didn't fully understand it yet, but he was beginning to feel it. Days turned into a week. Then 2. And something brutal started happening. He realized how much of his spending wasn't survival, but emotion. He bought snacks when he was tired, coffee when he was frustrated, fast food when he felt lonely, small purchases when life felt heavy. It wasn't money management. It was emotional regulation disguised as spending. And that realization hit him harder than any bill ever had, because it meant the problem wasn't just his income. It was his coping system. One evening, after a 14-hour day, Ethan sat in his car and whispered to himself, "I don't even know who I am without spending." And that was the moment everything cracked open. Because real change doesn't start when you want more money. It starts when you question your identity around money. He opened the notebook again. This time, a new instruction was written. Spend nothing tomorrow. Not to suffer, but to observe. Ethan laughed out loud.
Impossible.
But the old man had added one more line beneath it. If you can't control a single day, you don't control your life. That sentence stayed with him all night. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel broke. He felt tested. The next morning, he made a decision that would either break him completely or begin rebuilding him from nothing. He would attempt a full 24-hour no-spend day.
No coffee. No snacks.
No gas station stops. No small purchases. Just observation. And what he discovered within the first 6 hours was something he was not prepared for at all. By 6:12 a.m., Ethan already felt it. Not the lack of money, but the lack of distraction. No coffee run. No quick stop for snacks. No small comfort purchase to break the silence of his thoughts. And that silence was louder than anything he had ever experienced. He sat in his car outside a closed grocery store parking lot, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel. And for the first time, he noticed something terrifying. Most of his life had been built around escaping stillness. Because stillness forces honesty. And honesty forces change. If you're still following Ethan's story, you're already ahead of most people because most people never stay long enough in discomfort to learn from it. Subscribe and follow now if you want more real financial transformation stories like this. By noon, the withdrawal started. Not from drugs. Not from alcohol. But from habits. His mind kept pushing him towards spending. Just grab coffee. You deserve a snack. It's only $5. It doesn't matter. But now he was watching those thoughts like an outsider. And that changed everything. Because most people think they are their thoughts. But Ethan was learning something deeper. He was not his impulses. He was the observer of them. By 3:47 p.m., something unexpected happened. He realized he had walked into a gas station without thinking. By 6:12 a.m., Ethan already felt it. Not the lack of money, but the lack of distraction. No coffee run. No quick stop for snacks. No small comfort purchase to break the silence of his thoughts. And that silence was louder than anything he had ever experienced. He sat in his car outside a closed grocery store parking lot, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel. And for the first time, he noticed something terrifying. Most of his life had been built around escaping stillness. Because stillness forces honesty. And honesty forces change. If you're still following Ethan's story, you're already ahead of most people because most people never stay long enough in discomfort to learn from it. Subscribe and follow now if you want more real financial transformation stories like this. By noon, the withdrawal started. Not from drugs, not from alcohol, but from habits. His mind kept pushing him towards spending. Just grab coffee. You deserve a snack. It's only $5. It doesn't matter. But now he was watching those thoughts like an outsider. And that changed everything. Because most people think they are their thoughts. But Ethan was learning something deeper. He was not his impulses. He was the observer of them. By 3:47 p.m., something unexpected happened. He realized he had walked into a gas station without thinking. Old habit, body memory, muscle routine. He stood in front of the counter staring at the snacks. The cashier greeted him. Same as usual? That sentence hit him harder than expected. Same as usual. That was the problem. His life had been on autopilot for years. He slowly stepped back and walked out without buying anything. His hands were shaking. Not from hunger. From resistance. From breaking patterns his brain had protected for years. That night, something broke open inside him. He sat in his car under dim parking lights and whispered, "So this is what I've been doing to myself." And for the first time, he didn't feel like a victim. He felt responsible. That's the moment everything begins to change for most people. Responsibility, without excuses. The next evening, he returned to the library. The old janitor was waiting. Not surprised. Not impressed. Just calm. Ethan spoke first. "I couldn't believe how much I wanted to spend money today." The old man nodded slowly. "That's because spending is not about money. It's about emotional escape." Then he slid the yellow notebook closer. And this time there was something new written inside. A diagram. For boxes. Track, cut, save, invest. But beneath it was something else. A timer. 28 minutes. Ethan frowned. "What is this?" The old man finally leaned forward. "Most people think wealth comes from big actions," he said quietly. "But wealth is built in small, time decisions." He tapped the notebook. 28 minutes a day. That's all it takes to reset your entire relationship with money. Ethan shook his head. "That sounds too simple." The old man smiled. "Simple doesn't mean easy." Then he explained. 7 minutes. Track everything you spent today. 7 minutes. Identify emotional spending. 7 minutes. Plan what you cut tomorrow. 7 minutes. Decide where savings will go, even if it's just $1. Ethan blinked. That's it. The old man stood up. That's how control begins.